All right, welcome to the Law of Life Summit. And Royce, I think we're live. I can't hear you, Royce. Can you hear me? Andy, we'll do a sound check. Are you able to hear everything okay, Andy?
I can hear. Hello,
Okay,
everybody.
great.
Yeah, there we
All right,
go.
there we go. Yeah, awesome. So I can see that we're getting a steady stream of people logging in. So if you logged in for the Law of Life Summit, you're in the right place. And just based on the preview, we've got a really powerful discussion. Uh, the signs of the times are going to be addressed. And so as people are kind of making their way in, it's you can see a few of the presenters up here, which we will introduce here shortly. And for presenters, when you're not speaking, if you go ahead and mute your mic, it'll make it a little bit more enjoyable for everybody with background information. And for those that are new to this webinar jam, there is a chat function. If you look on your screen, you should see a chat function, and feel free to put notes on there, questions, comments. I'll kind of glance over as the moderator and work in some of those comments. And other presenters, take a look at those comments. That'd be fantastic. So welcome. I'm Pat Castle. I'm the founder of Life Runners, and I will serve as the moderator tonight. I want to lead off by thanking the co-founder of the Law of Life Summit, the spearhead, which keeps things moving forward and catalyzes this first virtual Law of Life Summit, Royce Hood. So Royce, you can see in the bottom right side of your screen. Now it looks like we just did a little musical chairs. Now Royce is in the bottom left. So Royce Hood, he is an Ave Maria grad, Ave Maria Law School grad, and he established this dialogue in 2012. I'm sure a lot of the people that are tuned in have experienced it live at the March for Life over the years. And he does have a neat vision, and that vision is this dialogue is important for getting organized and united for eroding the law of the land right now, which is Roe v. Wade. Hopefully not much longer. And Andy Bath is going to talk about that a little bit with the Supreme Court nominee list that came out today. So let's do an opening prayer. And we're going to use Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 as an opening prayer. So as we just bow our heads and we just say, therefore, since we are surrounded tonight by such an awesome cloud of pro-life witnesses, let us persevere in running this race set before us with our eyes fixed on you, Lord. Amen. So that is our charge.
Amen.
And to give just kind of some framework as people continue to kind of stream in to the dialogue, this discussion it is because there is a battle that has not diminished in any way. It is raging, and that battle is for life. Abortion has been declared an essential service in many states during the pandemic, while many states have labeled that churches are not essential services and have been shut down. We're going to hear from several advocates working on the front line to defend life and religious freedom. We've got some great presenters, and leading us off tonight, we've got the Thomas More Society, and that is Andy Bath and Paul Jonah. We also are going to hear from John Henry Weston from LifeSite News, who's coming from Canada. So good to see you, John Henry. We'll be listening, eh? And we also are going to have Laura Musica. I know she's working her way into the dialogue, having a little bit of tech difficulties. But by the time we round out to the Sidewalk Advocates, we hope to have Laura Musica lined up as well. So to kick this thing off, Andy and Paul, your charge is to discuss the litigation regarding, an update on the David Daleiden case, the class action suit against Planned Parenthood, and any litigation regarding the church closures. So, Paul, Andy, take it away. So Andy, you're on mute. We can't hear you. So if you want to unmute.
There he goes. And folks, I just want to welcome everybody also. John Henry, great to see you.
Good to see you as well. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
We can hear you. And
So
Lauren
Andy, So Paul, do you want to grab the baton from Andy and give a little charge for him and he can kind of pick up?
Sure. Yeah, I know Andy was going to discuss some of the big news that came out today with the oh, there he is. Maybe he can take it. Go ahead, Andy. Andy, I think you're still on mute there.
There you go. We can hear you.
No, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Pat, sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you for the great introduction. And thanks to everybody who's joined us. It's great to have people following our work. I guess I'm blessed to have breaking news about the Thomas More Society. This afternoon, President Trump released his list of additional candidates that he'll choose from when filling vacancies on the Supreme Court. And I'm really proud to announce that the Thomas More Society's own Judge Sarah Pitlick is on that list. We were sad when Judge Pitlick resigned from the Thomas More Society after she was nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate as a federal district judge. But we're really proud. Sarah graduated summa cum laude from Boston College, got her first master's degree from Georgetown, then got her second master's degree from the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, which she attended as a Fulbright scholar. Then she graduated at the top of her class from Yale Law School, where she founded and was president of Yale Law Students for Life. After that, she clerked for Judge Kavanaugh on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then she worked for a large Washington, D.C. law firm before coming to work for us. Now, her confirmation was a brutal battle. Planned Parenthood actually ran a campaign against her confirmation and called her Trump's worst nominee. If you watch,
what a compliment from Planned Parenthood.
That is a compliment. That's a badge of honor, Pat. It is indeed. If you watch Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, you know the scene because we were in that same hearing room. You saw the camera facing then Judge Kavanaugh, and what you couldn't see is that there's a huge, high arcing bench that the senators sit on, high and mighty, above while they rain their questions down on the nominees sitting down below. Usually the nominees sit there with their family and a friend or two, and most of the room is empty. But in the case of Sarah's nomination, the room was packed, it was standing room only, and there was a line of people roped off down the hall outside with a gaggle of press waiting for people to come in and out. Now, unlike the Kavanaugh hearing where he was there alone, hearings for district court judges are held with 3 nominees being questioned at a time. And just like Kavanaugh, each nominee makes a short opening statement and then they take questions. And about 3/4 of the way through the hearing, Senator Cruz told Sarah that he thinks that the other 2 nominees should buy her flowers because she's been taking all the heat. That's because every question that was asked by every senator was directed at Sarah and not at the other 2. And that's because she's stained by her association with us and because for her pro-life beliefs. There was only one topic they asked her about. There were no questions about her views on the environment, no questions about immigration, no questions on the constitutional limits on the use of presidential power, none of that. And the Democrats in the committee really attacked her for her pro-life views and her pro-life work. And poor Sarah had to endure that because our issue, the issue of abortion, has divided the nation like no issue since slavery.
Yeah.
But she handled it all with grace and dignity, and we're very proud of her. So even in the midst of this global pandemic, good things are happening in the pro-life movement. And one good thing that I want you to know is that despite this global pandemic, the Thomas More Society is fully open for business and is hitting on all cylinders. Yeah. We have more cases open now than ever before, and they're spread all across America, literally from coast to coast. And this is because the pro-life movement is becoming bigger and more effective than ever. So they need more legal support. But how we provide that in the midst of a pandemic, makes things look a little different, but really not much has changed for us. We did go from a bricks and mortar operation to a virtual operation almost overnight, and it was pretty seamless. And second, as you might expect, we're traveling less. Back in March and April, the judges were postponing court appearances, thinking the pandemic would clear by summer, but then the cases began to stack up, so the judges began having hearings by telephone conference and by video conference. So we're traveling less, but we're really not spending less time in court. In fact, we're getting ready to sue the state of New York to challenge parts of its ghastly RHA, the so-called Reproductive Health Act, in the name of the Women's Alliance Against Violence. We have many more lawsuits that we filed and others that are in the works. I think one thing that's worth mentioning about the COVID pandemic is that you've seen governors, mayors, and sometimes even county executives signing executive orders locking down their state or the county or the city. They're usually called stay-at-home orders or safer-at-home orders, and they're generally very similar. They start with a mandate that everybody has to stay home and all businesses must close. And that general prohibition is then usually followed by 15 to 20 pages of exceptions. For example, services deemed essential can open. So hospitals and grocery stores, for example, stay open. In some states, they single out marijuana dispensaries and you got it, abortion clinics being essential services, whereas they close down churches. And so the governors, you might ask yourself, where do they get off exercising this kind of power? Well, the legislatures have passed statutes that give the governors the power to declare a state of emergency and then wield emergency powers during the state of emergency. And whereas if they're passed by these laws are passed by legislatures who duly convened and passed the law so that the stay-at-home orders we think are largely, by and large, legal because they comply with the laws passed by the citizens' representatives in the legislatures. But they often trample on the First Amendment rights of pro-lifers and religious believers, so even where we find them to be legal, they're unconstitutional in many cases. So we've been contacted by pro-life nonprofits who want to know if they can operate. Are they essential? How they can operate? We had, within days of the first stay-at-home order being signed, we had 7 lawyers devoted to advising pro-lifers of various stripes, and then it only grew from there. We've taken lots of calls from sidewalk counselors who want to be able to go to the clinics. And you better believe that sidewalk advocates for life and life runners want to get out there to do their vital work, regardless of the pandemic. And one reason it was important is we often heard in many cities that the traffic at the clinics was up. And then, thankfully, we're also hearing that the number of saves is up noticeably too. When the
Andy, one comment there is the concept of separation of church and state. And of course, our country has all wrong. The reason there was separation of church and state was to keep the state out of church, not church out of state. For goodness sakes, we have chaplains in Congress, and we have chaplains on military bases. So has there been any angle on this where the state is not allowing churches to have the freedom of religion, our most cherished freedom?
Well, Pat, there are a number of states that respected the religious free exercise rights of the people when they passed stay-at-home orders, but there's a lot of bad actors out there that didn't. When the governors are empowered by the legislatures to wield dictatorial power, well, I meant emergency power, then
right.
Yeah, then the governors abuse that power in many states, and they signed orders that denied churches and religious believers their constitutional rights. And we went state by state suing the states, the governors, to get the churches open. So we filed 3 lawsuits against Illinois. Each time the governor amended his stay-at-home order to relax the restrictions on churches after the third lawsuit, he removed any restrictions whatsoever. We sued in Holly Springs, Mississippi. We sued the state of California. We sued New Jersey. And each time they relaxed the restrictions on church attendance. New York had entirely shut them down. So we sued both the city and the state. We won a great victory there. New York didn't take it well. They've appealed our victory. So we got that case at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. But when the governors, especially in New York, it was very blatant because that was one of the more recent lawsuits we filed, and that lawsuit was filed after the George Floyd demonstrations in New York. There we had the governor and the mayor both celebrating these demonstrations, which exceeded, all of them were when there are thousands of people are there isn't a single New York police officer that was out arresting people for being in groups of larger than 10. They were not observing any social distancing, and the governor celebrated what they did as an exercise of their free speech rights and their free assembly rights that are guaranteed by the First Amendment.
How about church?
But at the same time, they're shutting down churches.
Right.
And trampling on their First Amendment rights of free speech, free assembly, and free exercise of religion. And so we were not going to abide by that. And so we went to New York. We filed a lawsuit. We sued both Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo, and we got a great victory there. And we'll take that right up the appeals to the Court of Appeals and bring home another victory.
Great reflection. Imagine how many people have no idea that there was that kind of good work by the Thomas More Society that was helping church doors open. So high five for the Thomas More Society. Paul, there's a few topics you wanted to pick up on. Why don't you take a few minutes and get us informed? What's going on?
Sure. Yeah, just segueing and picking up on where Andy left off on the church cases. We're based in California. We're also with the Thomas More Society, and we filed two major cases involving the church closure orders. And the first one actually made it very quickly up all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was the South Bay United Pentecostal Church case, where four U.S. Supreme Court justices agreed with us that injunctive relief was appropriate, and the order was, based on the lack of constitutionality of the order as applied to churches. But we had, unfortunately, Justice Roberts, who sided with the liberals, and that resulted in a 5-4 decision. That was back in May. And so that case is actually still ongoing in the Ninth Circuit, and we're proceeding with, a decision on the merits. Those were all emergency rulings. And then after that, we filed a case in state court on behalf of Grace Community Church and Pastor John MacArthur, which has been in the news a lot lately because we got some amazing rulings early on in the case where the judge actually was the first judge in California to find that these orders were discriminating against churches and didn't meet the constitutional standard. It was an early ruling on a temporary restraining order. We just had a hearing last week on the preliminary injunction, so we're waiting to see how the judge will come out on that. It's actually a different judge, so we're not quite sure how it'll turn out, but we're aggressively pursuing the cases in California as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep praying. As far as
Paul,
sure.
Paul, just as you were given that update, and Andy, you can reflect back on this. It reminds me when the IRS was disproportionately disapproving pro-life and conservative party-like nonprofit actions. And the Inspector General broke that case 13th of May 2000 or the 14th of May 2013. And the Thomas More Society was working that case. And I remember Tom Brecka brought the findings of that distorted IRS work to the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee. And so that's the kind of work I'm reminded of by the Thomas More Society, and the same thing's going on with deeming services essential or not. You see this distortion of values and views going on.
Yeah,
I see the connection there, Pat. And our founder president Tom Brecka went and testified before Congress. And how many days after that did you get your nonprofit status?
Right. It felt like hours. It was the same day as that national news broke, and boom, suddenly approved. So that was from putting pressure on the system and showing that things were not just. So, Paul, you're seeing the same thing. You're looking at how they're doing it, and there is agenda that goes against what we were founded on, in particular, freedom of religion, our most cherished freedom, and you're defending that. Any other updates from California? Any cases you're working, Paul?
Yeah, we also have some updates on the David Daleiden cases, and also just some proactive offensive litigation. Andy, did you want me to touch on that now?
Please do, Paul. This is interesting. Good stuff.
So, as many of our viewers know, David Daleiden is the brave undercover journalist who released those shocking videos back in 2015 exposing Planned Parenthood's black market, where they were profiting from the sale of aborted baby body parts. And when I first saw his videos in 2015, the first thing that obviously, I was disturbed like most Americans, but the first thing that occurred to me as a lawyer, because my background is actually I handled lots of large scale commercial class actions for large companies and in big firms. And it wasn't until I did this constitutional stuff, actually it was right around 2013, that I got involved in constitutional litigation. And so my first thought was, Planned Parenthood has enormous civil liability. They have what they did to these women by lying to them, by misleading them into believing that they were just donating tissue, and the tissue was being donated for research that was going to save people from all these terrible diseases. Well, we know that's not true. We know that they were actually profiting from the fetal tissue. We know that now very well, because we were involved in litigation for 5 years against them. We know that they were changing all of these abortion procedures to harvest better tissue. So, but even back when I first saw the videos, based on what David Daleiden was able to obtain, we knew that they had enormous civil liability. And so I was thinking of filing a class action against them back then. And but what ended up happening was, as you know, David got sued, and we were involved right away. And we got the first case against him dismissed. It was filed by STEM Express. And then Planned Parenthood, National Abortion Federation sued him. Planned Parenthood sued him. There was a bogus criminal case brought in Texas, and there's another bogus criminal case right now in California. Thomas More Society has been involved since the very beginning. They got the criminal case in Texas resolved. We've got, the Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation cases are ongoing. There was an unjust verdict in the Planned Parenthood trial that we think that we're very confident should be reversed on appeal, and we're working on that appeal. But meanwhile, since we've been playing defense all these years, I knew that at some point we're going to play offense, and at some point we're going to be able to actually bring a case against Planned Parenthood because they're the bad actors. It was not David Daleiden. The ones that the people that broke the law were Planned Parenthood and all of their allies, and that's why there was criminal referrals made against them by Congress. So during the litigation over the last 5 years, we were able to obtain quite a bit of evidence, even though we had we believe a very biased judge with ties to Planned Parenthood. We were still able to do a good amount of discovery. We got these doctors under oath. We took their depositions. We cross-examined them at trial. We got some relevant documents, not nearly as much as we should have gotten. And we have expert reports. So we have a mountain of evidence supporting a claim against Planned Parenthood. And so what we've done is we've drafted a comprehensive class action complaint. And the only thing missing on the complaint right now is the name of a plaintiff willing to sue Planned Parenthood. And so we've prepared some videos that will help us locate a potential plaintiff. And I think you guys have those videos. There's 2 30-second clips. I don't know if you want to show them now or.
Royce, you ready?
Why don't we start with the manipulated video? We're going to attempt to play that now. So bear with us, everybody.
If you are a California resident who had an abortion at a California Planned Parenthood clinic in the last 10 years,
you may be entitled to compensation.
Planned Parenthood told women their fetal tissue would be donated to science. Instead, they sold it to big biotech companies for huge profits.
It's hard to realize you may have been manipulated for profit.
But you're not alone. Lamandry and Jonah have recovered tens of millions of dollars for their clients on other cases.
It's hard to realize you may have been manipulated for profit.
I heard a little bit of echo there. Hopefully that still came through. But the point is that we got some high quality videos, as you can see. We're trying to air them in as many markets as possible. We've had some resistance so far. Apparently, the large media organizations, they are kind of friendly with Planned Parenthood, and they're not too keen on having these ads played. So we're doing what we can. We want to get the word out through the pro-life community, obviously, but also more broadly. So we're going to do some social media campaigns pretty soon, put them on YouTube. And the idea is we just need one plaintiff, a California resident that had an abortion within the last 10 years, that was told that they were just donating fetal tissue, and it wants to hold them accountable for lying to them. And for, the complaint has a series of claims. I won't bore everybody with the details, but essentially these women were lied to, and these women were used for profit. And that's the crux of the case. And it's a strong case. Meanwhile, over the last 5 years, Planned Parenthood has been telling women publicly and telling the world publicly that they never did anything wrong, that the only person that lied was David Daleiden, and that they were able to vindicate themselves through this jury verdict they got with Judge Orrick. So all of those things are not accurate, and we're very confident that this case has enormous potential to expose them more fully. We plan to file it in state court, where we'll have a judge that doesn't have ties to Planned Parenthood, and we're looking forward to filing it probably within the next few weeks or months.
Good work, Paul. And what you and Andy just set up, I'm going to hand the baton over to John Henry Weston of LifeSite News. And John Henry in particular, I know you were kind of reflecting on those updates. Give your perspective as you've watched the news, the tides, and the culture in society, how these cases have impacted the news, the culture, the views, and the work that you do with LifeSite News to balance that scale of justice when it comes from what people get from the liberal media, and how you try to put some more balance, or shall we say truth, really, in the media. And so just kind of reflect on those cases and the work that you do with LifeSite News. Thanks, John Henry.
Great. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, good.
Perfect. Well, there can be no greater case than the David Daleiden case to really exemplify what we're dealing with right now, because that case bears on what we're dealing with as a society, as the world. All the world is watching. You mentioned in the beginning, I'm from Canada. I am, but the whole wide world is watching the U.S. presidential election. It's probably the most important election that we've ever had, and that's the world has ever had. And the David Daleiden case is glaring in this election because, as everyone knows, Kamala Harris is the prosecutor who went after David Daleiden. When David did all this amazing work to demonstrate absolutely illegal trafficking in aborted baby body parts, what happens? He gets pursued. He gets put into the limelight, into the criminal limelight, as if he's done something wrong. When he was one of the most courageous citizen journalists we've ever seen, he went undercover in order to expose a criminal racket. And what happens? They turn on him instead, while seemingly ignoring all the hell that's going on, that they know is going on, that the proof is there that's going on. The video testimony is there from the very defendants on the other side. Just, it's been an incredible thing. And Thomas More Law Society and the other law societies that fight for life and faith and family and freedom are doing, it's untold work that really often goes without a claim and needs to. They're defending LifeSite News a lot. We are sued all the time. We just they've been helping us for years, but they're helping us currently with 2 different lawsuit threats because the left is serious about shutting down free speech, shutting down freedom of the press, and shutting down specifically pro-life and pro-family speech. Now, it's an incredible thing to watch what's going on in society right now, because as you know, we're sort of falling apart at the seams. There's absolute mayhem in the streets. There is a buildup like we've never seen before. There is a war going on outside our very doors that is coming to our doors. It's awfully concerning. And people, one of our own staff members, literally, her husband, a police officer, was sleeping, in her bedroom with her little kids, scared, had her gun beside her, and ready to defend her own children if necessary. We're living in unbelievable times. Who would have thought this is mainstream America? But nonetheless, here we are. And in the midst of all of this is this great fight that's going on. And we've got here in yourself as well, a lot of heroes in this fight. And those of you tuning in, you really need to support the men and women before you here, because these men and women are on the front lines of the fight, and we're privileged at LifeSite News to report what they're doing, and really, hopefully, shine a light on these great men and women doing the Lord's work in defending life and family. If you want to take a look at a really neat snapshot of what's going on, you can see I just did an awesome interview with Robert Epstein, who, by the way, is on the very opposite side of where we all stand in life and family. But he was telling me the horror of what big tech is doing, what they're capable of, and what they are doing. First question I asked him was, "What do you care? It's all leaning in your direction." And he was very clear. Yeah, it might be leaning in my direction right now, but it's not leaning in my direction in China, where Google is assisting the Chinese Communist government to repress its own people. And it might not go my way, he was saying, politically in the future. He's for freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and still for a free America. And what he was telling me, and what you can see with all the whistleblowers from Facebook, Google, etc., is that the control coming from big tech is absolutely stunning. It's scary as heck, and we need to be ready for it. LifeSite is already shut down on our Instagram. They just pulled our Instagram unless we agreed. Well, there's no option at Instagram. They just pull your stuff. Tough luck. Twitter has blocked our account and has now for almost, I think we're upcoming a year, because we refuse to misgender someone in the real sense. They're saying we're misgendering by not calling a biological male a female. And of course, we're just trying to report the truth. At the same time, you have an unbelievable fight within churches where you would think there should be a very clear choice in elections between, an agenda that's totally anti-life, an agenda that's pro-life, and yet
anti-God, not just anti-life, but anti-God.
And yet you have this unbelievable fraction inside the churches as well. And watching bishops who should be speaking in one accord on the opposite sides of one another is truly scary. But there have been a lot of gems in the last little while. I think a really good snapshot of, and I'll really end with this. It's a little bit of a story, but I think it's well worth it. A good snapshot of the fight we're going on in right now and what it can look like is actually the Republican National Congress. If you watch that, it was an amazing thing for many reasons. It was all sorts of stately. America the Great was all of a sudden back again. When you compare that to the other side's Congress, it was unbelievable. The contrast was so clear, just in terms of aesthetic, in terms of stateliness, in terms of, I guess you could say, making America great again. But it was an incredible show. But for pro-life Americans and for pro-lifers all over the world, it was stunning. It was absolute to see Abby Johnson stand up there, our hero who came from the other side, a convert who lived the other side, experienced the other side, give her own testimony right there and come out of there just on fire, as Abby always is.
Very Saint Paul of her, huh, John?
Absolutely, right there. And it was so awesome. But then you have Sister Dee Dee Byrne. I mean, blew people off their feet. You had
our weapon of choice is the rosary, was her quote.
Yes, and I'm not just pro-life, I'm pro-eternal life, and that's why I'm here to tell you that Donald Trump is the most pro-life president. This is an unbelievable witness also from someone, and by the way, a nun who is also a medical doctor and surgeon. That's just incredible. Nick Sandmann is out there.
And a retired military, I think retired Army.
Absolutely, and you would say that, wouldn't you, Colonel?
You know it.
But we have Nick Sandmann standing up for freedom, like the poster child for what the fake news media does. Because his story, by the way, he sued them and got millions, but nonetheless, his story showed that the leftist media is willing to take down even teenagers in order to push their agenda. So it's unbelievable. And of course, we know Nick Sandmann is also a pro-life teen. But also you had, I don't know if you guys saw Madison Cawthorn there. This was, that was the 25-year-old who was paralyzed. It's worth seeing if you haven't seen it. So he's sitting there paralyzed, and he's talking about how we need to kneel for our God, but we need to stand for the flag. And when he says it, he actually stands up, like he forces himself up to stand. That was incredibly moving. You had Lou Holtz, from Notre Dame, football coach Lou Holtz, come on and basically call Biden Catholic in name only. Nobody's a stronger advocate for the unborn than President Trump.
And even though Lou Holtz won a championship for Notre Dame, they said that he wasn't a spokesperson for him. Like, wow, the national championship doesn't give you spokesperson ability. So like, come on.
It's amazing. You also had Chen Guangcheng. Some people might not know, but he's the blind pro-life activist in China who is fighting the one-child policy, who was beaten under house arrest forever and ever, and then finally made it to America. And he's speaking as well at the Congress. It was so incredible. There's more and more you could say. Obviously, David Daleiden, and then and having the end for me was really beautiful. There was the Ave Maria sung from the White House.
John Henry, I'll tell you what I appreciate about your report tonight is that you focus on the good news. And you know the job that you do. So I follow you and I follow LifeSite News, and a lot of the stuff that you have to report on, it's just like news. You read it and just cringe at some of those headlines, but those headlines aren't found anywhere else. It's given the whole story. And so I appreciate you giving us the of the world, but I also appreciate that tonight, folks that are tuned in and listening, there is good news and there is a good fight going on. And so, Lauren, as you take the anchor leg of the 4x4 relay we have going on tonight, I'd like you to kind of reflect on how we started out with Andy and Paul, and they gave updates on some really critical cases. We talked about how in some states they called abortion essential, but church not essential. In some states, they basically went against separation of church and state as intended, which is to keep the state out of church, not church out of state. I mean, our founding fathers absolutely wanted to rely on a higher standard. And that's why we have chaplains in Congress and chaplains in the military, you know, as intended. So if you as a lawyer yourself, Lauren, and as the executive director of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, and the work everywhere from the law of the land and how you erode it literally at the front line. I mean, I'm the Air Force retired guy on the line, but you're the Marine commander. The Marine commander is the Semper Fidelis, the always faithful, and on the front lines. And I like serving with you as you go to the front lines. So this Air Force guy, I don't mind flying over and dropping things in, but I also like to go hang out with the Marines. And that's why I serve also under your ministry of Sidewalk Advocates, as well as support the Thomas More Society, as well as high five Royce Hood for keeping us in this dialogue and cheering John Henry Weston forward. So your anchor leg is if you can just kind of pull together how you see this reflected on the sidewalk, and certainly the presidential election and all the heatedness that's going on right now. I'll just go ahead and let you know from my perspective. serving each Friday. It's never been nastier.
Mm-hmm.
12, and it is very heightened. And short of, as you said, I mean, we could turn this into lots of experiences on the sidewalk, but you go first. Just give your view of all things considered from this 40 minutes we spent together so far, and if you could reflect on it and give us some sidewalk advocate bird's eye view.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, howdy.
Good? Okay, awesome. I think I've had every technology issue tonight. I hope you guys didn't get seasick.
I'm glad you went last.
In and out, finally got on here. So I'm praying like this holds strong. We got a storm moving through the Dallas area where I am. So real quick, I'm Laura Mika, Executive Director of Walk Advocate. And if some of you are still getting familiar with us, our mission at SAFL is to train, equip, and support those who have a heart to go to where abortions take place, to offer loving, life-affirming resources and alternatives, thereby saving preborn children and mothers and families from abortion, as well as gradually ending abortion. And we do have Dr. Pat Catt in our ranks. He's a sidewalk advocate in the Midwest. Definitely one of the best in the country. He's amazing out on the sidewalk. So privileged to have you with us, Pat. So yeah, let me give you guys an update on what we've seen on the ground recently, especially in the past several months, and how all of this comes together to hit the sidewalk. When everything was going into lockdown in March, the abortion industry was taking advantage of it. We saw advertisements from abortion centers to the effect of, hurry up, come in before there's a mass quarantine, before you can't get an abortion, right? I mean, so much through any sort of decision, hurry up and come in and get your abortion. And this is an industry that already makes so much money off of fear. And in March and April, we had fear times 10, right? Now my screen changed. Can you still see me and hear me, Pat? Yep. We're good? Okay.
Yes.
So we had fear times 10 early on here. At this point, we had a decision to make, right? Do we fold up our ministry fear, knowing that there were women flocking to abortion centers? Were we determined to find a way forward? And just a side note here, I know that some pro-life ministries, maybe needed to close up for a small period of time because maybe they thrived on numbers or they had special circumstances. In our case, what we do in front of abortion centers is one-on-one outreach, one-on-one conversation with people, right? And so we were determined, looking at those local and federal guidelines, find a way forward. And I'll rattle those off here in a second, but I have to pause for a second. So the Thomas More Society did not slip me a 20 before my presentation. They didn't know I was going to say this. I have to pause and give them a shout out because they reached out to us and said, we're assuming you're still going to be out on the sidewalk, and we want to help you navigate this rapidly changing landscape so that you can, acting within the confines of your First Amendment rights, still answer God's call to be there for these women and children. So you all may remember these various, stay-at-home orders, shelter-in-place orders that came out in the various states, right? Thomas More Society did homework big time, noticed a lot of commonality between those, and they were able to with a way forward. And, just to cut to the chase, during, these entire last several months here, we have not had one arrest in Sidewalk Advocates for Life, even though we have 200 locations and dozens of sidewalk advocates in each location. They were able to stay on the sidewalk. Thomas More Society did their homework. Some of our folks had letters to carry with them if needed. They made phone calls into police departments when needed. They've got a great strategy from the beginning: comply now, grieve later, even if you think the officer is being unfair, right? And that helps us to get back on the sidewalk more quickly, and it helps us to stay there for the long term. And so anyways, great legal strategy, super appreciative to the Thomas More Society. And the guidelines that we followed all public, federal and local guidelines for health, right? Public health guidelines. Those who were particularly vulnerable, we asked them to be prayer support from home and to use discernment in that regard. We maintained a small but effective presence the vast majority of abortion facilities where we have a presence, and then we postpone to start in-person or group trainings for a small period of time. Have those again with some social distancing. And so here's what's so interesting. Our folks on the ground working hand in glove with pregnancy resource centers noticed a huge influx of women at abortion centers, right? Going back to all those advertisements where they were trying to take advantage, hurry up and come in, and all of that fear that was just in the air, right? You know, if the parking lot before was a little full, it was really full at this time. And some of those parking lots that, you know, sometimes could get kind of full, they were spilling over into overflow parking lots. And so I'm just so honored and excited to lead this ministry full of saints who still went to the front lines, who, you know, abided by those guidelines, who were, who wore masks, who wore gloves, who wiped down things in between every bit of outreach, right? So cool, Pat, this is just so amazing, is since March, we have added over 2,000 turnarounds at abortion facilities all over the country. And so, Andy, I hope you and your team hear that you are, no doubt, through God's grace, greatly responsible for those numbers. We don't know what we would have done without you guys. But, you know, we persevered. And, you know, what I want to do just kind of in closing is share with y'all a story. And I'm grabbing it right here. But I also want to say, too, you know, Pat, you were referencing that, you know, on the sidewalk, it's kind of a microcosm for society. When there is tension with the election, we see it on the sidewalk, right? When there is tension in our cities over, you know, racial issues or whatever it may be, it sometimes shows up at least nearby out on the sidewalk. And our folks have had to proceed in great wisdom to protect themselves and their other sidewalk advocates, even the clients that they're reaching out to, and, you know, being wise about when to hold back and when to say something. But again, they persevere through that. And so I don't know what we would do without great attorneys. I'm an attorney myself, but I don't practice. I'm way too busy for that. You know, we link up with the Thomas More Society and Alliance Defending Freedom. And, you know, we do see the effect of good laws on the sidewalk. We see the effect of a supportive administration on the sidewalk, right? You have lived this even very recently. I know you've got a story or two to share, but I want to share a story really quick because, again, it's kind of been the biggest issue is like, how do you navigate abortion outreach during a pandemic, right? That is still what's kind of hanging in the air. And so this is a real quick story from our leader in New York City, where they were hit particularly hard because of. So Michael writes, I reached out to her and she stopped and looked at our pregnancy help brochure. Are you pregnant? He asked. Yes, she whispered. We can help you. Housing, education, finding a job, things for the baby. We help over 1,000 families a year. What do you need? She turned her face to me with wide sad eyes and said, I am afraid. And he said, afraid of what? And she said, I have to do this because of the virus. I don't know what is going to happen. I just get chills when I read that, right? And he said, oh no, we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow or in 2 weeks or ever, but things change and women are strong. But if you go in there, you know your baby is going to die, and that you can never change. The Holy Spirit took over. We talked about her baby. She did go around the corner to make a call. Mother, when she got off the phone, she said, my mother says I have to go in because of the virus. I cannot be selfish. Isn't that amazing how the enemy twists that, right? And he said, you are not being selfish.
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking of your baby. You are a mother. God gave you this baby now, and you can be strong and fight for it. She called her boyfriend. He left the decision to her. She took a deep breath and said, I'm going to go in and at least see how far along I am. And Michael said, please don't go in. They're just going to try to sell you an abortion. And then he asked for her name, right? And he said, I will be praying for you and I will wait for you to come out. So Michael, along with sidewalk advocates all over the country, have spoken lives of women, kept vigil for them when they've still gone inside. This is how Michael ends the story. She went into Planned Parenthood, but came out 12 minutes later. I can't stay in there. I want to go home, and I will call the Pregnancy Resource Center. As we walked to the subway, she remarked that this may have been a sign. that happened to me today was telling me not to. Before we parted, she took some protein bars I offered her to eat. Different woman from when we first met at the door to Planned Parenthood. She was now calm and confident. Beautiful. And so I just really have to thank the pro-life attorneys who were on here. John Henry, what you all do at LifeSite News to spotlight what these saints, again, I serve saints every single day. You know, I learn from them every single day. It's just such a privilege to serve them. But the collective efforts of everyone here has kept us on the sidewalk, has kept us persevering on the sidewalk when maybe the government was tempted to shut us down. And because of that, there are over 2,000 women that had appointments at an abortion facility that instead accepted life-affirming help in their community, went to a local life-affirming pregnancy resource center, got connected with other resources, and their baby is alive today, and they were spared the pain of abortion. So I want to thank you all so much for all the support that you give to all of these efforts. We are seeing the fruit of it every day. 4 to 5 children every single day. Just announced over 10,000 babies saved from abortion. We're actually getting ready to announce another milestone coming up here. We blew that out of the water. So again, 4 to 5 children being saved at least every day on the sidewalk still.
Praise God. Thanks, Lauren. And that story you shared, you've got hundreds and really thousands. You got hundreds of written and thousands of stories, because I know that you just passed 10,000 confirmed lives saved because of the training that you've provided and people willing to execute those best methods, reaching out to abortion vulnerable women. So keep going. Anybody that wants to serve in the Marine Corps of the pro-life movement, it's Sidewalk Advocates for Life. And I love the training. I mean, anything in the military, you know, it's all about training, being fit to fight. So thank you for training us to run so as to win. And some rounding comments as we wind out this hour. I reflect on, as I heard everyone give these updates, we think about these good governors and leaders. We think about Governor Kristi Noem, Life Runner Governor Kristi Noem, that said churches will remain open. We think of Life Runner Governor Pete Ricketts, who recently signed the dismemberment ban in Nebraska. So no babies will be dismembered in the womb of mothers in Nebraska, and to lead the way. You know, we think of the Lieutenant Governor, Mike Foley in Nebraska, who put a call out for all people of faith and pro-life people to pray and fast for that dismemberment ban bill to pass. I'm like, wow, those are leaders. Those are leaders that our founders would be high-fiving based on what we know of the founders of our country. I also reflect on, when I think about the place that I serve as a sidewalk advocate, is in front of Leroy Carhart's abortion facility in Bellevue, Nebraska. Now, most people associate him with late-term abortion because he flies every week from Omaha, Nebraska to Bethesda, Maryland. And he does, you know, abortions through 40 weeks in Maryland. Here he does abortions through 20 weeks, and we visited with mothers that have shared that he offered to abort their children up to 26 and 28 weeks. Of course, that's illegal in Nebraska. So we know he's been doing that. And so I serve there, and that Leroy Carhart's the one that has his name on 2 of the major Supreme Court decisions on abortion. One in 2003 on partial birth abortion, and then that was overturned in essence in 2007 on the partial birth abortion ban that was upheld. And then finally, some notes, Lauren, when you were sharing about stories on the sidewalk as it relates to the laws and having the Thomas More Society with the lawyers having top cover for us. I think about things like this past Friday when we were informed that a law in Nebraska is if you are to text message someone help. So one tip, Lauren, you and I have done is a lot of times we'll work with those influencers, the fathers that brought their girlfriends in or their daughters in, and we'll try to get a cell phone number for the mother, and then we'll encourage them to communicate. And you tell some great stories about getting text messages in that have helped mothers get support. So this past Friday, we did exactly that. One of our sidewalk advocates, Bernadette Costello, a lady arriving for an abortion, was one of her former coworkers when she was a nurse. And she was able to call out to her by name and say, hey, this is not going to be something that you want. This is not going to be a shining day in your life. Let me help you. So she sent her a text message of support and help. And that coworker called the police on her. The police arrived and let her know that even reaching out and help, if it's, hey, don't text me anymore, that's illegal. But it was a neat dialogue with the police. And we agree with you, Lauren, always law abiding, but it's great to have dialogues of really, in a lot of ways, we minister to the police. We say, okay, yeah, we're going to abide by that, but we want you to know what message we sent. We showed the police officer. We read to the police officer. And then we said, wow, to think that it's illegal to help a friend. Like, what would you do if that was your friend in there? So it really helps change the hearts of even people that are upholding our law. And in this case, some unjust laws when it comes to abortion. And then another perspective is the escorts. So we think about now we have escorts that are being so aggressive that they come down and put signs in our face. And what we've done, Andy and Paul, and kind of reflect on this as Thomas More Society top cover as lawyers, is we have labeled them as protesters. So how we interact with them when they cross over into our space and they put a sign up in our face, we don't look at them as escorts or workers for the abortion facility. We look at them as protesters protesting us. And we'll refer to them as such. And we've had them call the police and complain, say, hey, they're calling us protesters. But when we describe to the police what they're doing, holding a sign in our face and pushing us away from cars, they say, we agree, you're a protester. You're protesting these sidewalk advocates. So it's kind of a new angle. And so having all of us, Lauren's like, she's thinking about strategy
That's
right
good.
now.
There you go. Keep going, Pat. Keep going.
You got it. So, I like to say that heaven is a team effort, and certainly saving lives is a team effort. When you think about the education, the training, the top cover, the confidence, everything goes in. John Henry sharing the stories. It is a team effort. When the ball goes across the goal line, it took all the players on that field for that ball to get across the goal line. And so we have some of those players on the field represented here tonight. Everyone watching or listening in, you are part of it, because if you're listening in or watching this webcast tonight, you are getting educated, you're getting inspired, you're thinking about what else can I do? Well, the things you can do is absolutely support these organizations, support Thomas More Society and Sidewalk Advocates for Life. Tell people about the Law of Life Summit that happens in conjunction with the March for Life and some virtual events in between. Support Life Runners. And the best way to support Life Runners is get online and become a Life Runner. And oh, by the way, maybe the best news of the night, running's optional. The only thing you need to do to be a Life Runner is be willing to put a shirt on that says, remember the unborn, and help impact hearts and minds for saving lives. Starting conversations in grocery store lines, walks around the block. So if you're like, yeah, I could put on a shirt that says, remember the unborn, then do it. Jump and support Life Runners by being a member of the team. So I want to thank all the presenters tonight. Fantastic, updates, great perspective, great winning attitudes. And a lot of these updates, like Andy with the Supreme Court list that came out, that Thomas More Society has a lawyer on that list. Wow. And the updates cutting edge, Paul, that you shared going on in California. And I loved your perspective, Paul, that you said you knew there would come a time when we move from defense to offense. I love that, because I agree with you. I agree that the other side is feeling it. It's feeling like the Kurt Warner Rams, when he would just chuck it down the field and score way more points than the defense knew what to do with. And I'm seeing that we're starting to do that with legislation and cases pushing the other way. So we will run so as to win. 1 Corinthians chapter 9:24. And this is the winning team. Folks that are listening in, people that are watching, everyone listening in is part of it. If you're a fan and you're cheering forward, praise God. If you're praying us forward, praise God. If you want to suit up, praise God. If you want to go to the sidewalk, praise God. But get involved. Everybody do something. Because I know we all believe that if we all do something, all of us that believe in life and liberty, if we all do a little something, this is going to end. The tide will go across the goal line. Our reflection will be that light on the hill, that beacon for the world. And we've been there before, and we're on our way back. I agree, Andy. You can feel it. You can feel it with Make America Great Again, with Keep America Great. You can feel it. And the tone that John Henry shared, that difference between the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention, it's the difference between a losing team and a winning team. Difference between a God fearing team and a godless team. And we know how those scriptures go. You know, it only takes a small number to be victorious when you have God on your side. That's this team. We believe that. That's why we rallied tonight. So thank you again, everybody. And we just offer up all these efforts and we put them in that basket with the loaves and the fish. And we know what he did with 5 loaves and fish. Well, guess what? Let's put ourselves in that basket and let's God multiply all these efforts and believe it. Believe it. Abortion will end in our neighborhoods, in our families, in our communities, across state lines, and around the world. Believe it. Keep going. God bless everyone's effort. High five Royce Hood for pulling us all together tonight. High five Paul and Andy. High five John Henry. High five Lauren. Keep going. God bless. And I guess, Royce, this is the baton handoff to you. If you have any final words as the founder of the Law of Life Summit. I can see your picture there. I don't know if you can hear us or if you're tuned in, but you've got the button. So you get to have the official, this meeting is over since you have the end webcast button.
I don't know if you can hear me, Pat.
Yes.
My internet is all right. My internet is terrible for some reason, so that's why I haven't been chiming in more. I just want to thank everybody for coming. We've been getting some fantastic comments, people from all over the country, and really, I feel like a strong turnout. The people that joined us have stayed on the entire time, which is great. So, guys, if everybody's interested, we are going to do a follow-up summit in the next few weeks. We'll announce a date soon, so expect an email. We'll also include a link to the videos that Paul was talking about regarding the class action, and we'll provide links to each of these wonderful organizations as well. So if anybody wants to learn more about what they're doing, they can do that. So thank you, guys. Without further ado, we'll be signing off, and God bless each of you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye, everybody.